Welcome to the Nebraska Hawkeyes. These guys are brave. They're Hawkeyes living in enemy territory. Listen, these guys are way past their prime, but they're still Hawkeyes. They're spreading the Hawkeye hype to all of Nebraska. The frost advisory is canceled. Corn Huskers, more like corn suckers. Are you ready for this podcast? Let's go Hawks!
All right, welcome back to the Nebraska Hawks Nest, your Hawkeye oasis in a lonely, desolate Nebraska desert. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you can get all of the updates with our latest Hawkeye interviews. Everything Hawkeye, you want to hear it. And let's make the number one podcast in all of Nebraska Hawkeye one, because that would be awesome. Joining us today, one of my all-time favorites. We're really excited to have former Hawkeye defensive lineman Joe Gaglione. How's it going, man?
It's going good. I appreciate you having me on, Adam. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you on. I got to tell you, Joe, right off the bat, everyone's thinking it, so I'm just going to say it. That beard is legit.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad everybody agrees with it. My fiance likes to give me a hard time when it gets too long, so I got to keep it trimmed up.
That looks good, man. I noticed that right away. I'm like, God damn, like Joe's beard's putting me to shame. I can't grow a good beard, that good of a beard, so I'm not man enough quite yet. Maybe when I grow up, I can.
No, I appreciate it. I had a beard once or twice when I was at Iowa. So I don't know if you ever come across a photo, but my senior year, we all decided to shave our heads against Indiana and had a goatee with a bald head. It was not a good look. So I got told never to do that again by the fiance when she saw it. So
I bet you looked mean though.
Yeah, it was good. Obviously, when you take the helmet off, middle of November, it's cold out. You got a bald head. You got the steam going. Guys wonder, what's going on in his mind over there. So
yeah, that Stone Cold Steve Austin look is always like an intimidating look no matter what. So I don't know. I'm always a fan of it, but the fiance's opinion matters a lot more than anybody else's. So speaking of the fiance, though, you got a lot of new things going in life. Like life is really starting to happen for you. A lot of cool things. Can you tell all the Hawkeye fans out there where you're living, what you're doing for work, what's going on with the family life? Because there's a lot of things blooming right now for Joe.
Yeah, happy to. So I live currently in the suburb right between downtown Cleveland and Lakewood. It's called Edgewater. So we're within walking distance and Uber distance of Tremont, which is a pretty nice up-and-coming neighborhood, Ohio City. And I actually work in University Circle at Case Western Reserve University. I did my master's in finance there.
Okay.
So I actually work in the Office of Investments there. So we manage the portfolio, the endowment, and it's about $2 billion today that we have direct oversight over. So
wow.
We cover all asset classes, anything ranging from traditional public equities all the way to venture capital, private equity. And then we will even do some real assets, so real estate, infrastructure. We've done some investments with like Spectrum and towers. So,
all right. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, I've been there a little bit, about 3.5 years now, and it's been good. So learned a lot, and it's continue to grow. And it's exciting every day, something new. So
I can tell just like 5 minutes into this interview, you're already way smarter than Jerry or myself. So yeah, that didn't take very long. So Joe, you dabbled in coaching a little bit. Am I right? Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually coached at John Carroll when I was deciding to do, sort of the journey after I got done playing. So I ended up having a back injury that forced me to stop playing. I ruptured a disc in my low back and tried to continue to come back, but ultimately it ended up happening again. And after seeing the doctor, I just decided, to hang it up. So that was about 2014, early 15. So I did a year in like private wealth management, and I liked it, but it just wasn't really for me. So when I was applying to grad schools, I decided to make sure that football, the new route was, I'm officially done with football. So I actually started coaching at a D3 school here in town that has a pretty strong connection to the front office called John Carroll University. So I spent 2 seasons there, 1 season coaching defensive line and outside linebackers, another season splitting time between outside linebackers and offensive line. It was great. I actually got recruited by them coming out of high school. I remember, I started getting some of the bigger offers late in my senior season. But Coach Cochran, give him a shout out. He's actually at Akron now under Tom R's staff. You'd wait around like an hour or two after games just to hang out, and it really made an impression on me. So I took a visit there and just remembered, it's a good academic school, and it's a tough program to obviously balance both paying for your own cleats because it's Division III, and relative to a D1 program. So, but it obviously wasn't the same as playing, but I really enjoyed what I learned and just transferring that knowledge and experience, to guys that are 18 to 21 years old. It was great. I did look at potentially doing scouting, but just decided sitting in a car every day, driving from small college town to college town wasn't for me. And I ultimately decided I got accepted to a couple of grad schools. And once I got into Case, I was fortunate to get a full scholarship. And being from Cleveland, it was a pretty tough one to turn down.
No, I can completely understand that. So you hit on real quickly your recruitment at a high school. And I, from digging back at everything, Indiana and Pitt were pretty heavy on you, and you got offers from them. You racked up about 22 sacks your senior year of high school. So like you said, the recruitment picked up pretty late. And then you had obviously Iowa in the mix too. Walk us through your recruitment process and what made the University of Iowa stand out from the rest of the pack for you.
Sure. Happy to. So I would say it was about the beginning of my junior year. So I spent 2 seasons at a small school here. I grew up in Chesterland, which is about 35 minutes east of downtown Cleveland. So small school, went to football camps going into my sophomore season. And they said, hey, you got some talent. Where do you go? And they never heard of the high school. So I decided to actually transfer to Lake Catholic. So that was going into my junior year. Obviously, Hawk fans will remember Ricky Stanzi. Rick was a couple years older than me, but we went to the same high school. I didn't know him then. The first time I actually met Rick was on my official visit to Iowa. So, it was. It stood out to me at Lake that it was. I mean, it's a good powerhouse for football. We ended up making it to the state semifinals my senior year. We lost to Newark, Licking Valley. If anybody remembers Storm Klein, he played for Ohio State. He was a linebacker. He started like a year or two there, but he was actually the running back at that time. So, but we played some good schools. I mean, we played Benedictine, which obviously some Hawk recruits came from there. We didn't play Glendale or anything, but they were above us. But played some really tough competition. My junior year, I had some success, made all conference, but I actually ended up getting mono the second game of the playoffs. And it really put a damper on me recruiting wise. I got invited to some camps going into my senior year, but I lost like 25 pounds. So I was like 190 pounds. So obviously playing D-line at 190, it was a tough sell, but I got up to about 210, 215 going into my senior year. Was fortunate to always be pretty quick. I timed well at a couple camps that I went to. And by the middle of my the game that really stood out was actually Dublin Kaufman they had two guys going to Ohio State. One guy was top 10 recruit. Mike Adams was the left tackle for them. So he played at Ohio State. Spent a couple years in the league for the Steelers. So that was really the game that got me on the coach's radars. And after that, but Iowa was one of the first ones to really consistently talk to me. And then I actually remember it was about right after we lost, actually, Coach O'Keefe and Coach Kaz reaching out and offering me a scholarship. And but that dialogue, continuous, going back and forth for a couple months, really, stood out relative to the other ones. So once word got out, I sent out a bunch of highlight tapes. I got a lot of offers late. Ohio State actually even came to the party late. They said they don't want to let talent come out of the state, but I was already committed to Iowa. So, but when I took my visit, that's what really stood out. So I fell in love with just the fans. One, two, it's a great nightlife at Iowa, so it really stands up to its reputation. Three, I would say just academically as well. I mean, it has a good reputation, and it was always a dream of mine to play in the Big Ten, being from the Midwest.
Everyone we talk to, they say the biggest difference between Iowa and everywhere else is always the relationships and how genuine the coaching staff is and how straightforward they are with them during the recruiting process. They're not blowing smoke or promising them all these lofty things. So other than the relationships, though, Joe, was there anything that really stood out from you or was different when it came to like facilities and atmosphere of, the campus and everything that goes into that package, with the differences between your three major schools being like Indiana, Pitt, or Iowa? Was there much of a difference?
Truthfully, I actually ended up only taking an official visit to Iowa. They sold me hard, and I fell in love with it. I got begged to take visits to the other two schools, but ended up not doing it. But what really stood out to me was, Kinnick at the time. Actually, I think I was there. My first year was the last year was grass before it turned to turf. So I'm dating myself, but it ultimately, stood out. I mean, it was 75,000 at that time. It was a great stadium, Big Ten, and really just as you mentioned, the coaches don't BS you. I mean, it's a blue collar reputation. I came from a blue collar family. So hard work always was something that I, learned at a young age. And I think it just really resonated with me. And, it was just, they said that given an opportunity to come in and play early, if you can contribute. And that was something that was interesting to me as well.
Tell us about your relationship with Coach Reese Morgan. We've talked about him at length on this podcast about how he's impacted so many players' lives and how the guy just has an unbelievable talent for catching diamonds in the rough, seeing talent that 2-3 years down the road that other coaches don't have the capability of seeing. In my opinion, I think Reese Morgan's one of the most underrated coaches in the history of college football that doesn't get talked about. But tell us a little bit about your relationship with him.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think I have very high praise for Coach Morgan. Was sad to hear the news when he retired, but I mean, he's earned it. He devoted a lot of time to Iowa, and hopefully they can continue finding those diamonds in the rough. Think of Brandon Sheriff, Dom Elvis, and the list goes on to some of the guys that he found from these small towns, and brought them, and they went on to have success. So, but for me, he was actually the offensive line coach when I first got there, and he was that for 4 years. So I had a decent relationship with him, just obviously given one-on-ones and all the drills that we would do against the offensive line. And then going into my senior year, Coach Kaz, who was a defensive lines coach, actually left to go to Nebraska. Coach Morgan made the transition. I think Coach Ferentz thought it was going to be a good idea, given that we were going to be pretty young up front. And obviously, given Coach Morgan's being a former teacher and just his ability to be able to, groom young guys and teach, it would be a good fit. For me, I unfortunately had battled some injuries early on in my career. So I had 2 shoulders, 2 hernias, and an ankle. So it was tough sledding between my freshman and sophomore year. And then really my junior year was when I finally started to remain healthy. But Coach Morgan was always there for me too. He was one of the few coaches that consistently checked in on me mentally it's obviously tough. I mean, you can be alienated sometimes when you're on your own, coming back from injuries. So I had that really close relationship with him there, and then I was really happy to hear him move into D-line, and I think that really showed in my senior year, because he allowed me to go out there and make plays, and also really groom some of the young guys, and was happy to obviously see once I left, Drew Ott to go on to have some great success, Carl Davis, Darian Cooper before the injury. So, I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah, it sounds like from the guys that I've talked to that are still close to the program and guys that are still there, I think Coach Morgan's still about as involved as he was before he retired. He just can't stay away from what I hear. So that's good for us. We want him to be around as much as possible, because the guy's a once-in-a-generation coach. And, we have a handful of those on the staff that I think really set that staff above and beyond the other ones in the country. And we're pretty lucky to be able to hold on to those guys, because it seems like, the coaching college football, it's such a stepping ladder. Guys are always trying to move up, get in a better position, make more money. And we're very lucky across all sports. At the University of Iowa, we do a pretty darn good job of keeping the really great assistants around. One of them that we did lose, though, was Coach Gesicki, Coach Kaz. He went on to Nebraska and had coached you a little bit while you were there at Iowa. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to play for him, how intense he was. And, he kind of fits that Bo Pelini type of intensity. Tell us some stories and what it was like playing for him.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Coach Kaz is at his core a good guy, but he definitely is a fiery guy for sure. There's no other way to put it. I can't. The numbers just go on with the number of film sessions, people getting chewed out, and obviously that's kind of norm in major college football. But maybe he went a little bit above and beyond. But a couple of I remember actually my junior year we played at Nebraska. And we were down at halftime, and he just lost his marbles and flipped a table, and so that just sums it up. He definitely loved to show that intensity, get guys going, and he obviously had a great opportunity to go coach for Coach Pelini after that. So I don't fault him for leaving, but my first experience, I remember being a freshman in camp, and couple of days in, he told me that if I'm too tired, that I can go ahead and get a bus ticket back to Cleveland. So that was my first true experience with Coach Kaz. It definitely resonated with me. But no, I mean, he definitely made an impression on me, both good and bad. But it ultimately shaped me into the guy that I am today.
If anything, playing major college football teaches you resiliency, like being able to push through and deal with things like that. Because, if you have after playing major college football, you go to your job and your boss gives you a hard time and jumps down your throat. You're like, that's nothing. I've been through way worse than this.
That's what I say. I mean, sometimes it can get tough in the real world. You always hear it, but until I remember being in high school saying, enjoy those times. It's the best time of your life. And God, it's the truth. I mean, obviously now being a grown up, but yeah, I mean, tough times, whether it's personal life or obviously in work. I mean, it's nothing. I even tell my boss sometimes, okay, this is nothing compared to what I got called and was used to. So
it's funny because when you're in college, it's like you have no money. Hardly at all. Yeah. And you go to I remember going to the ATM, okay, I need to hopefully have enough money to get out to have some drinks or buy a 30 pack of Keystone Light, because it was $12, and I'm like, 30 stones, that can get me through most of the weekend. So it's funny that it's hard to explain, but there's nothing like college. It was by far the most fun I'd ever had. And it sounds like, you had a pretty great experience as well. I wanted to ask you, though, when you were on your visit, what was the one thing about Iowa City or even the University of Iowa campus as a whole that surprised you the most? Maybe something you weren't expecting.
I think just being actually downtown, just being how close campus is actually to the bars. I mean, I remember hearing about a thing called FAC, Friday after class. And obviously we never really got to participate in it due to, practice or traveling due to games, but there was that slim chance every once in a while that we got to in the off season for about a 2-month gap. And I mean, you could, if you had a class that went to 4:30, you could literally just walk over with your backpack and put it under the table and, go grab a big beer for $2. I mean, it was a tough thing to turn down. So, but I remember, actually, unfortunately, the late Tyler Sash was actually my host on my official visit. And,
really?
Yeah. So it actually, him and Cody Huntermark. So, both of them really did a good job on selling me. They took me to some good places. And I actually remember the first time I walked up to the dance floor Summit Bar, I was sold. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
How fun was it hanging out with Tyler Sash? Tell us a little bit about him as a person. That's one guy that, whenever his name comes up, everybody just lights up and loves to talk about him. I don't feel like we talk about him enough. He was such a great figure for the Hawkeyes and did so much for us. What was he like as a player to play with, and also just as a human being?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he hit close home to me, being my host. He was really my first exposure, short of the coaches, to the Iowa football program. So I had him in pretty high regards. And I was obviously really sad to hear what happened. But ultimately, I just try to remember the good things, right? I mean, most people, when they hear him, they think of a guy who played through a ton of injuries. I mean, he obviously had the shoulder issues, but I mean, you would never know that. I mean, he just played his ass off every play, and literally left his body out there. And I think that showed both in college and, you read the stories about him when he was with the Giants wanting to play in the Super Bowl. I don't fault him one bit. I mean, it's everybody's dream to play in the Super Bowl when you start playing football when you're 7 years old. So, but yeah, I mean, just a tough guy on the field, played good team football, and also really had that ability to make a big play when the team needed it. And obviously, I think that shows up. Remember, I think it was my sophomore, junior year when we were playing Indiana at home in Kinnick, and we were not doing well. It was pretty close. It shouldn't have been that close. And then he ended up scooping that fumble back and took it back like 80 yards. So I mean, that's a good memory of him. And yeah, I mean, off the field, he was always a good time. I remember him for a shoe game. He was actually one of the people that got me into shoes. So he always had a nice pair of Jordans on. So.
I remember that interception that he had against Michigan State and then pitched it back to Micah Hyde. Like 9 times out of 10, that turns out to be a disaster. Like you don't ever pitch back a fumble like that, like do a lateral back. That ended up being the most brilliant play ever. And then Micah just took off. He just, he knew he must have just, saw 20 steps ahead. Like, okay, I'm not going to get this. Micah's going to get this. I don't even know if you probably remember the play I'm referring to, but
absolutely.
how cool was that to witness that? Because Michigan State was solid. They were good that year. We put a shellacking on them that game.
Yeah, I think it was actually Cousins was the quarterback. Kirk Cousins. Yeah. I could be wrong, but
I think
they had some guys for sure. But yeah, no, it was great. Obviously watching that. I mean, he always knew how to improvise, and like I said earlier, I mean, he just had that knack for making big plays. And I mean, I think for anybody else, the chances of that going bad are pretty high, but it worked out for him, and I'm sure he may have gotten reamed out of it in film by Coach Parker. But at the end of the day, you can't be upset about that. It turned out pretty well. So.
I don't watch too many Iowa games in sports bars. That one I did in Sioux City, and the whole place about fell out of their chairs when he pitched it. Like, no! And then Micah Hyde got it, and then about 2 seconds later, everyone's like, oh, okay, like this is gonna end up okay. Like it was one of the most memorable plays ever. So it was pretty awesome. Speaking though, like of great stories, and I kind of mentioned this to you earlier when we first talked. We always like to hear cool, like interesting, funny locker room or practice or weight room stories that, the general fan like myself or, people listening out there, we're diehard Hawkeye fans. We know a lot about the football program, but it's things that, an insider would know and we would know, something that you kind of look back on a Thursday at work and puts a smile on your face and you kind of laugh about.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that camaraderie and that bond. It's I for some reason always think of the plunge pool, the cold tub. It's a weird thing to think about, but obviously you're in there with like 6 to 8 other guys, and you're just bullshitting about random stuff, and it's just good memories, to think about. So that's one, and another is really just some of the times, obviously, when we had nothing to worry about in the off season, whether it be going to see a movie or going, Friday after class, or where the night took us. I mean, those are definitely some good memories.
All right, Joe. Now you sound like you enjoyed the Ped Mall, the Iowa City life a little bit, which you should. You're there. Yeah. That's your college life. So we're hypothetical here. Okay, you're a senior, and I'm a freshman not even a freshman yet, but I'm on a recruiting visit, and we're going to go out for the night. What type of places are you going to take me? Name a few places and what we're going to do for the night to show me a good time and what Iowa City's all about.
Yeah, that's a good question. I unfortunately haven't kept up with. I know a couple places have closed recently.
It could be back when you played. Back when you played.
Okay.
Even.
I think I would start the night at Airliner. There's usually pretty cheap drinks there. You can get the night going, have a good time, just hang out at a booth or up at the bar with your friends, and obviously show the recruit a good time. I would then go on to Summit. It's obviously a little bit different of an environment, but I think that's what sold me late at night. So kudos to the players at that time. But and then I think I would end the night at Union. I do remember hearing about Union being closed, but that you have to have a couple of drinks in you before you go there. It was fun when you're a true freshman, but by the time you're a junior and senior and you're playing 50 plus snaps, the last thing you want to do is go to Union and get bumped into by some 18-year-old.
So. It looks a lot different down there now. Last time I went down, they're doing a ton of construction down there. There's a whole strip of places that are closed down, and I don't know if they're just remodeling the buildings or what's going on, but it looks quite a bit different now.
Mm-hmm. Actually, last time I was in Iowa City, I ended up taking my fiance, her brother, and his wife up to meet one of my buddies who actually didn't play sports that I lived with. We went to see the North Dakota State game. Unfortunately, the Hawks lost that day, but I laugh because my fiance always talks about how John Carroll is known to be like one of the bigger binge drinking Jesuit schools, and she ended up having a puke hangover by 8 p.m. and had to go back to the hotel. So she saw what Iowa City's all about.
Yeah, there's always people that come in, they're like, oh, I've never gotten hungover. I've never gotten sick before. Go out in Iowa City for a night and try that on for size. And I was at that North Dakota State game. That sucked. That was that was the first Hawkeye game I ever took my kids to. And I'm like, okay, I think you guys are about old enough now. Let's, we'll go to I'll take you to Kinnick this year. And I'm like, let's find a game that I'm pretty sure that is a 99% sure victory. And so I'm like, all right, we'll North Dakota State's a very reputable program, but we'll handle them. And then, my son looks back at me and like, geez, at the time he was like 7. And he's like, Dad, does this happen all the time? Like, what's going on? I'm like, no, this never happens. It's not supposed to end up this way at all. But here's the deal. It was a great life lesson that no matter what, we're still fans. We're still fans of the Hawks. They're going to win some, they're going to lose some, but regardless, we still support the team. So it was a good learning lesson for him too. So it helped me keep myself in check. I was pretty frustrated at the end of that game. Like, come on, guys, you can run the ball up the middle so many times, and let's try to do something else. But you remember that too. I was so frustrated. I'm like, how many times are we going to run this play? It's like the break the rock mentality. It's like eventually they're going to break. Well, they didn't break. They held us the whole time. So North Dakota State, you got to play them just like you would play a Power 5 school. Like, they are legitimate. They got a lot of guys that get looked over that end up in the NFL. There's 2 North Dakota State quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Like, that's pretty legit.
Absolutely.
Moving on though, no more talking about that ugly North Dakota State game. But I'd like to hear that the University of Iowa football program, we talked about this earlier a little bit. How do you feel like going in there and then leaving, how it changed you and shaped you as a person.
Yeah, I would say, I went in as a young, naive 18-year-old coming from Cleveland, Ohio. And, I think you learn quickly. I mean, I was 9 hours from home, and it's definitely a step up. It took me a while to gain weight. I ended up having some injuries, so I truly had to face some adversity. There were some dark moments for sure, but I was fortunate that I stuck with it. I actually got very close to just calling it quits after I ended up having my third surgery. So it got to the point where I was like, is it really worth it? But I had a lot of deep thought about it, and it was something that even if I only played one play, my goal was to play one play before I left Iowa. And I was fortunate to go on to have some success, fortunately, and it ended up nipping me in the end, injuries again. But at the end of the day, I think it really taught me, brotherhood, 1, 2, like the meaning of a true friend, 2, how to overcome adversity, and 3, just truly hard work, blue collar mentality. And I think I take that to work every day and try to follow through with that in my everyday life now.
Joe, we're glad you stuck it out too. We're very glad you stuck it out. Ended up being a great Hawkeye. Tell us a little bit about your time with the Minnesota Vikings, just what that was like, the level of talent you were going against, and just what the atmosphere was like in the locker room. Most people don't even get to take a peek at being an NFL player. You did, which is awesome. Tell the regular fans like us and everybody out there that is never going to get a chance to feel like what it was like to be an NFL player, what it was like during your time with the Vikings.
Yeah, no, it was obviously for a short cup of coffee. It was a dream come true, quite frankly. It was something that I always wanted to, that I dreamed of since I was like 7. And being able to put on an NFL helmet was great. And I can truly say, it didn't happen and the way that I wanted to. It unfortunately, injuries cut me short, but at the end of the day, I can live with it. I did everything in my power to try to come back from it, and I'm happy and can sleep well at night. And I think it just taught me a lot, and it's honestly a fantastic icebreaker for business world now, both Hawkeye stories and that. I truly, really am not one to talk about sports at all, just in the business world. I want to be viewed as a true financial professional. But when folks do their research and they bring it up, they're very naive why I don't sell it. So it's it leads to some good stories for sure. And then you throw a little bit of whiskey in there, it leads to some good conversation. So.
No, I'm sure you got even better stories you can't tell us on this right now. So did you at least get like a cool piece of like memorabilia from being there? Did you get to take your helmet home or your practice jersey or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I got a helmet and a jersey, which was cool. And then I have obviously some shorts and shirts and all that good stuff. So it was great.
All right, cool. So you got a few mementos from the whole thing. That's good.
Yeah.
Did you get any of that stuff like framed and put up in your home at all to look at?
We're actually in a 2-bedroom apartment. My fiance and I, we've been trying to buy a house, just been waiting it out. I consider myself a value investor, so I'm trying to wait for home prices to go down. They're crazy here in Cleveland. I think
they're crazy here too. Yeah, they're awful here.
So I'm waiting, but we'll see. But I definitely have plans for that in my whiskey collection for a nice man cave when I move into a house finally. So.
Good man. That's always good to have, no matter what. So tell us about your fiance. Okay, who she is, where you met her, how long you guys have been together, and then I think I remember you telling me you guys adopted a bulldog here recently. So you got a new member of the family.
Yeah, we do. So I actually met my fiance when I was coaching at John Carroll, and she was a student athletic trainer. So she was a senior. I was coaching. Some can say I tried to poach on somebody young, but she was actually the one who approached me. So we're, about 4 to 5 years apart. So nothing too bad. But no, I actually we barely had any conversation initially, and then I actually remember my brother went to Kent State University here in Kent, Ohio, obviously a MAC school. And he got me to come down one night for, I think it was my 25th or 26th birthday. And we went down, and she was out with some of her friends, and I walked into a bar, and I couldn't even get to the bar without her running up to me. And the rest is history. So we're actually one of the few stories that actually met when you meet somebody in a bar that actually ended up well. So normally I'm bad, but I've had a few of those. But it's obviously I'm really happy. She's truly my everything. She's awesome and really fortunate. So we'll be getting married September 3rd next year. We got engaged June 13th this year. We flew down to Florida and Tampa and did it down there. Nice. And it's great. And then, we recently just got an English bulldog. So we got him when he was 8 weeks old. We got him from a breeder here in town. And he's great, but he definitely makes us sleep deprived between work and his 3 a.m. wake up calls to go to the bathroom and crying. But I love him. We named him Winston Stagg. He looked like a Winston. His middle name's Stagg after Stagg Jr., the whiskey. So I'm a big fan. So.
Oh, Joe, I wish I was man enough to drink whiskey. You sound, from what you said, you're a big whiskey guy. I smell it and I cringe. Like I can't even and then I'll be honest with you. I've taken a shot of whiskey 3 times in my life. 2 times I puked, and the other time I held it in with everything I could. I am not man enough. What is your favorite 2 or 3 whiskeys out there?
Yeah, no, not to bore you with a long story, but I initially classified all whiskeys as bad whiskeys. So I had a really bad experience myself. Remember the summer going into my junior year at Iowa, actually, it was right when Riley Reef left and got drafted. He came back into town, and we bumped into him, and he decided to buy everybody a shot at Jack Daniels. And we've definitely had a few too many drinks at that point. But it was a warm shot of Jack Daniels, and you pair too much to drink with a warm shot of Jack Daniels, you can probably guess what happened. I puked everywhere. A couple minutes later, was fortunate not to get a public intox in Iowa City. But I had a huge mental block about whiskey. I had always loved tequila. That's another thing that I really liked. But I got into more the Reposados, which is, more the yellow one, and then obviously the añejos and the extra añejos. And when you start learning more about it, they actually age those a lot in oak barrels. So you get that similar smoky and potentially oak taste that you get with a lot of whiskeys. But for me, what really got me into whiskey was actually my fiance's dad. He's been drinking bourbon for 30 years. And I may have been spoiled. He put me onto some good stuff pretty early, but I've been drinking it now for 3.5 years, and I got into collecting it pretty hardcore about 2.5 years ago. So I probably have about 125 bottles of whiskey.
Wow.
I think my fiance actually made her wait in line yesterday on her off day to get me a bottle of Henry McKenna. So,
nice.
She's awesome. So fortunately, her dad groomed her pretty well, and she appreciates the hunt for bourbon. Ohio is a price-controlled state, so it's super competitive here. And these guys, it's tough having a job. You have to have connections at certain stores to even get a look at some of the pretty good stuff. But my top 3, I would say, I actually am fortunate to get a bottle of Weller Full Proof, which is a pretty coveted one in the Weller line. It's a wheat bourbon. I've had a pour. I haven't opened my bottle. Definitely waiting for a special occasion. My second one would be Stagg Jr. It's higher proof. I like more of the barrel proofs. You get a dark chocolate and a cherry hint to it. So it's almost like a cherry Coke. And then, it's good stuff. And then I am a big fan of pretty much all Heaven Hill products. My unicorn bottle is Old Fitzgerald. I've had a pour actually right after I popped the question. I paid up for it in Florida, but it was the best pour I've ever had. Short of, I actually just recently found out I passed CFA level 3, which is sort of the coveted exam in finance. No, thank you. I found out actually August 10th. So my fiance forced me to go out. We went to a whiskey bar here in town and paid up for a pour of the WLW, which is part of the Buffalo Trace Antique collection. And, it's fantastic. The hype is not hype, and really fortunate. I've tried 3 of the 5 now, so
Okay.
it'll be if I can get all 5 and own them personally before I die, I can die happy. So.
There's a really cool, and I'm never going to think of the name of it right now, a documentary on Netflix about, have you seen that, about the whiskey distillery or whatever, with the employees that work there, and they were sneaking these like high-end barrels and bottles of this, like you could pay for like $5,000-$10,000 for one of these bottles.
Yeah.
And did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I think it's called Heist, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. But
I think you're right.
It was the guy who actually worked at Buffalo Trace.
Yes.
And it's funny. He started off like stealing Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, some of the middle of the fairway products, but then he started stealing like 23-year Pappies, which is like a big time bottle. I've been fortunate to have a pour of that on a work trip. I mean, it's fantastic, but I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a bottle. It's just insane. I mean, that one, and then there's actually another really good documentary on Hulu called Neat, and it shows all about the history of bourbon, and they actually interview a lot of the master distillers and talk about like what whiskey means to them. And I'm excited. I'm actually going. A bunch of us are going down in September to do the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky, and I'm going to be having my bachelor party there too next year. So
nice. I'm sure that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, we'll see. It could end bad, but I'm excited. So
it's gotta end bad. Otherwise, it's not a good bachelor party. Are you making it back to Kinnick at all for any games this year?
I actually got asked last night by my fiance to go back. She wants a chance at redemption, so for not having a puke hangover at 8 p.m. So yeah, we may have to make a trip up there. And definitely take a look around this year. So.
All right. Well, shoot me a message if you're going to be around. We're going to be up on homecoming weekend versus Purdue. Okay. So if you're going to be around, we're going to be doing a little player event with some former players. So we'd love to have you. So if you're going to be around, let us know, and I'll make sure I'll buy a shot of whiskey or a beer or something to thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely do so.
All right, Joe. It's that time, man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on Nebraska Hawks Nest, talk about what you're up to, your wonderful fiance, the new French bulldog, your career. I learned more about whiskey than I think I ever would have known before, which is great. I love it. It's great to see that you're doing well. And I know Hawk fans are going to be really happy to hear how great you're doing. Life is going extremely well for you right now. And you know, we love seeing that. We love to see you winning at life and succeeding. So thanks for coming on and sharing everything with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to anytime. So thank you for having me on. Appreciate
All right,
it.
Joe.
Shout out to Hawkeye Nation.
All right. We always end it with a Go Hawks, Joe.
Yeah, go Hawks.
All right, go Hawks.